Small island developing states rely extensively on their coastal and marine resources. Yet in these resources still lies a wealth of untapped potential for growth and development. As such, greater focus is now being placed on sustainably utilizing and managing our marine resources. Welcome to the Ocean's Potential, a special feature on the blue economy and sustainable ocean management for UNCTAD 15. In this program, we will discuss the blue economy and its potential for growth, challenges for small island developing states in transitioning, and efforts in Barbados to sustainably manage its marine resources. Professor Robin Mahon from the Center for Resource Management and Environmental Studies at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus explains the term blue economy.
The blue economy is not well defined. It's evolving, so we cannot really say exactly what it is. It's a kind of a catch-all term that has emerged even in the last 5 or 6 years to cover all of the various activities that take place in the oceans. And in fact, many people still refer to sustainable ocean economy. And UNCTAD actually uses that term more than blue economy. But the idea is that it involves bringing together under one umbrella all of the things that are happening in the sea so that we can sustainably utilize the resources there while maintaining the ecosystems so that they can continue to serve future generations. This is really important for small island developing states, largely because the land area to sea area ratio for many of them is huge. They have way, way more sea area than they have land area. So this provides an opportunity for them to develop and expand in ways that they have not been able to using their landside resources. Having said that, though, islands have been using marine resources from the time they were first populated, so that is not a new idea.
It has garnered a lot of recent attention, I think, because in 2012, leaders of developing nations said, look, a lot of the world is focused on the green economy and deforestation and compensating larger economies for the damage that they're experiencing. But for us in small island developing states, nobody's talking about the ocean. So it's almost a rebel kind of orientation, developing countries making a stance for themselves. So the blue economy is about how do we manage that space, that water space. For Barbados, our ocean space is 424 times the size of our land space. That is significant opportunity.
Barbados has a land space of 166 square miles. We have 12 nautical miles as our maritime territory, and our exclusive economic zone is much larger. And this is a point that I want to make. So our territory runs from the coastline 12 nautical miles away from Barbados's coastline. We are responsible for everything under the water, so the seabed, the water, everything in it, and the airspace above those 12 nautical miles. And then we have an exclusive economic zone that extends much wider. And in the case of Barbados, I actually wrote the figure down because I wanted to get the numbers right. It's 186,898 square kilometers, 72,162 square miles. So Barbados as an island is 166 square miles, or 431 square kilometers, with a potential environmental economic space or maritime economic space, or to use the correct legal expression, EEZ, exclusive economic zone of that magnitude. And this is where SIDS have a tremendous potential for leveraging that power. Yes, you are a small island, your small land space, but that maritime territory potentially has significant resources that can be exploited. We just saw millions and millions of barrels of oil found in Guyana. We know that there is oil in the waters offshore Barbados. We know that there are minerals that can be extracted from the seabed for a wide use of industrial and other applications. We know that our marine resources also include fisheries, whether it is sea eggs or snappers, potfish, or pelagics like dolphin. So there is a tremendous potential economic wealth in our maritime territory, and we have to develop proper instruments for the sustainable exploitation for our economic benefit as a country and as a people.
Well, for most small island developing states, coastal and marine resources are critical. Many of them are high island states, and we have a lot of those in the Caribbean, but also in the Pacific and elsewhere, where to put it simply, the middle of the island is a great big mountain, and everything is clustered on the coast, on usually a very narrow coastal plain. So space is very limited. And so, the idea of expanding into ocean space is very attractive and is seen to hold a lot of potential for small island developing states. They're very dependent on tourism, many of them, which is also very dependent on healthy oceans, seafood, good functioning coral reefs and other ecosystems for a variety of reasons. And unfortunately, our tourism partners haven't quite tuned in to the extent that we would like on how important the sea is to them in terms of beginning to partner with us and contribute to building sustainable oceans.
Unfortunately, we do not know a lot about that, 424 times the difference of our land space, as is the case in most places around the world, right? Many people do not fully understand what is in that ocean space. And so we now have a responsibility to protect that space. We have a responsibility to preserve the biodiversity within that space, for the fishermen that utilize the space, but just for life, just to be able to live and to be able to maximize it. In Barbados, we looked at a few core areas in our blue economy. We looked at transportation, specifically as it relates to maritime transportation. We looked at health as it related to the health of the ocean, but also our own capacity to be healthy by running on the beach, taking a swim, beach-related activities and sports and so on. We looked also at biodiversity and biotechnology. How can we use the ocean to generate the kind of results that larger countries are able to generate now? People are finding all kinds of medicines and so on in the ocean space. And of course, we looked at fisheries. And the idea was to look at the original way for fishing, traditional fishing, but also to look at aquaculture and aquaponics and mariculture and different areas, so that we would do all of this within a renewable energy platform. That is the Barbadian approach. There are other areas, of course. There's tourism, depending on how you look at it. There's ocean-based renewable energy. All those are within the blue economy, but specifically for the ministry, that's how we've chosen to focus on it.
The wealth of potential held in our waters has led to some regarding the blue economy as the next frontier in development. Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy, the Honourable Kirk Humphrey, gives us his take on this notion.
I don't know if I want to call it the new frontier. I think that we've been doing a lot of stuff in the blue economy for a long time, even though we've called it by another name. But I do think we have to deepen that frontier. We have to be bigger in our imagination, bigger in the way we conceptualize what is possible for the blue economy. We spoke very briefly about renewable energy, and ocean-based renewable energy is going to be, I think in that regard, the world is our oyster. All the studies have shown that the waters around Barbados can produce enough energy to basically propel and light up the whole of the Caribbean. We know that we have the energy source here. It is natural, it is there. What is prohibitive has always been the cost. But Barbados has been very steadfast in our belief that that is one of the areas of revenue that we have to pursue. The minister responsible, the Honourable Carrie Simmons, he would tell you that Barbados is already in part of our reach out in energy. We've already contemplated wind energy offshore. We know, for example, that in the north, there are areas that we've identified as well as the south. We're going to have both fixed and floating wind farms in Barbados. That would allow us to generate electricity, that will reduce our energy bill, in Barbados that would make the cost of doing business significantly cheaper than it currently is, that would feed into our grid once we can settle on the feed-in tariff rates and so on. We've made very clear recommendations as it relates to renewable energy from the ocean. And those will begin to, I believe, significantly reduce the expenditure, because fossil fuel is expensive. And as the world is, many people, talk about renewable energy once diesel prices go up or once gas prices go up. But once the prices come back down, nobody's having that conversation. But the conversation is changing now, because it is not about the price of diesel anymore. It is about the impact on the climate. And therefore, that is going to be, I think, a significant revenue earner for Barbados. At least it's going to reduce our costs significantly, the millions that we're spending on fossil fuel, and it helps us position ourselves as a principle-based country as well. That's one. In terms of being able to fish and the fish that we catch, for the most part, Barbados cannot export to the European Union right now. It is one of the things that saddens me. I've met with the representatives of the EU here. I've met with the Minister of Agriculture, and he's in fact leading the process in helping us to be able to export to the EU so that we can have more exports on the international market. To be able to do that, we have to be able to catch fish. There has to be fish to catch. Barbados imports between 70 and 80% of the fish that we consume. For a small island developing state like Barbados, that is regrettable. That is why I think it's going to be important that, one, we manage these spaces so that we can start to replenish our fish stock, one. The ministry is working on what we call FADs, fish aggregating devices, that allows, that once we place them around the island, as we will, it would allow fishermen to go to these particular areas and to catch fish, so that they don't have to go hunting for fish. They know where to go to catch the fish. It has to be managed, but it's going to also reduce the amount of fossils that are being burned to catch those fish, and generates greater revenue, because we believe you're going to catch more fish with a lot less effort. To be able to export to the EU, there are a number of things that we're doing in the markets. You would see that in the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, we're upgrading all the markets. There has to be a clear path now between where a fish is caught. It's called bait to plate, really. To be able to export to the EU, to ensure that it is not what is known as IUU fishing, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, whereby people can come and catch fish anywhere and say, well, I caught it in Barbados. No, you have to say where you catch your fish, prove that you catch your fish in a particular location, trace that it is being dealt with in a healthy way from the time you catch it straight to the time it goes to the market, even if it's processed there. If we loin it here, as we intend to do with the tuna, if you loin a tuna, you can make much more money from it. So it is not about catching more tuna, it is about being able to process the tuna. So that instead of me sending a fish to the US, which is what currently happens, and they say this is grade A tuna, and they send that to the US and they receive it and they say no, this is grade C tuna, and they pay me less. No, I grade it here in Barbados by Barbadian standards that are obviously shaped by their standards. So that once we loin it, they can't tell me the quality of my fish, and it generates additional revenue. We also believe that aquaculture, being able to fish farm, is going to generate significant revenue. And then there are a number of people who want to go into new areas of fishing in Barbados as well. And then lastly, I think the capacity to just be involved in biotechnology. To use our ocean space, Barbados is a hub to allow other universities to come. People have already been talking to us. Come and to see, using their technologies, to try their technologies here, to become a hub that attracts science, that attracts innovation, that attracts technology, that we can in turn increase the capacity of Barbadians, yes, but can give us greater understanding of this particular ocean space. And once we do our marine spatial plan, which is what we're currently doing, and this is a big deal for Barbados, to be able to have a marine spatial plan that tells us the various activities that are occurring in our entire exclusive economic zone. No other country in the Caribbean has done it. We are about to do it. That tells us the various activities. Where can we allow seabed mining if we go there? And if we do seabed mining, it has to be under the strictest of conditions. But it is also another source of revenue. But it has to be under the strictest of conditions. I will not encourage it or engage in it if it breaks the balance that I keep speaking about. It has to be done in a sustainable way. But it is a potential source of revenue. So as a new frontier, I think it is about just exploring some of these areas. It is about, in the traditional areas like fishing, being able to do it sustainably but smartly, so you catch more, you get more revenue for catching the same amount of fish. or that you can catch more fish but not in an unsustainable way. It is about educating people so that we do not destroy what it is that we have. And I think generally it is just about paying attention to the ocean space as an economic driver in ways that we have not previously done.
So yeah, I think it is helpful to see it as a new frontier. I think it stimulates energy, it stimulates ideas, but I think we need to also be realistic about what is involved in transitioning to a blue economy. I like to look at it in two ways, or two parts. One part is doing better at the things that we have been doing all along. I've spoken a little bit about that already. Fisheries, pollution, and so forth, and tourism, the way that we have been using the ocean all along. We need to sharpen up on that, and that is going to require a lot of skills and capacity. And then the other angle of it is taking advantage of the new opportunities, such as ocean energy, marine genetic resources, areas like that, oil and gas, new areas that we have not been into so much from a development point of view. And that is going to require a lot of technological capacity, managerial capacity, skills, and so forth that tend not to be abundant in small island developing states. So the transitioning, we have to think about where are we going to get those kinds of skills and capacities for both angles, both the things that we've been doing all along and the new stuff that is, generally speaking, held up to be where the real returns are going to come from sustainable ocean economies. But those are big investment issues, they are long-term issues, and we need to focus our attention very much on the things that we need to do to improve coastal ecosystems in the short term. So a lot of what we have to be concerned about is how we're going to get the capacity that we need in order to pursue these two avenues. In small island states, there's a limit to how much capacity you can have on island, and therefore we need to focus on regional approaches and sharing capacity, building capacity at the regional level. I mean, a good example of that is the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, CARICOM's fishery organization, which has been working at the regional level in fisheries now for 20 plus years. So that's the kind of regional cooperation that we need to promote. And they work with UNCTAD quite a bit as well, and they've been doing good work in the region in terms of, for example, pursuing conch value chain analyses in Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Lucia. Because the way that we view our fishery value chains is an important component of this transitioning as well. Are we getting the most out of our fisheries that we can for what we actually catch? Are we putting in place the mechanisms to develop value-added products? Or are we just simply putting the conch on a ship and sending it up to the USA where they get all the benefit? So these are areas that UNCTAD is assisting with, and that through the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, we can take some advantage of those kind of value chain analyses.
However, transitioning to a blue economy is not without its challenges.
Well, I mean, one of the major ones is finance and accessing finance. The kinds of developments that we're talking about are often big infrastructure developments that require a lot of money. And so we have to develop innovative ways of partnering with those who have the money and ensuring that that partnership results in benefits to small island states. So that's a big issue there, but also putting in place the kind of governance arrangements that are going to be required in order to ensure that as we reap the returns from what we're doing, that we are staying sustainable and that we are not destroying the marine ecosystem. And we haven't done very well at that in the past. So I'll have to be forgiven if I have a little bit of skepticism about our ability to suddenly turn around and do a good job of that without making some serious changes to the way that we perceive sustainability and environment in the ocean.
Beyond these challenges, climate change threatens not only the terrestrial environment, but the marine environment as well.
We are now seeing what a big game changer it can be. I mean, look at the implications of sargassum, which we're now fairly sure is a climate change type output or outcome. That's had a huge impact on our tourism, on our fisheries, also on transportation, marine transportation. So climate change is something that we're going to have to seriously reckon with. It's likely to increase storm intensity, which can also be a factor for marine transportation. But most important there is going to be our sea level rise, which is going to end up in erosion of our beaches, and we should probably be thinking of retreating from the coast soon, and the town planners should be factoring that in, and I believe that Barbados 2017 Physical Development Plan has a lot to say about that. Then we have the warming, which is likely to lead to destruction of corals, and that is a huge factor for small island developing states globally, because coral reefs protect shorelines and also produce a lot of food. And last but not least, the big unknown is what the implications of acidification are going to be, because as carbon dioxide increases, it dissolves in seawater, and seawater becomes more acid. And many marine organisms have shells, which is calcium carbonate, which dissolves in acid. So corals, clams, all sorts of crustaceans that have shells are going to find it more difficult to maintain their lives and reproduce as the ocean acidifies. And as we talk about expanding into blue economies, developing blue economies, these are huge things that are looming over us that are we're going to have to figure out how to deal with them as we go along. And I think there are probably a lot of surprises ahead for us, like sargassum was a surprise. And we will struggle, as we struggled with sargassum, to develop ways of approaching it, and we still haven't solved that problem completely. It's something we're going to have to live with and manage.
People don't and did not traditionally draw the links between these environmental issues and economic or social impacts. They did not think initially that if there is bleaching of the coral reefs or coral reef dies, that means something to the fisherman who used to go spear fishing there to get pot fish to sell, to get money to feed his family, or to the housewife who has somebody in her household, or she has chronic non-communicable diseases, so it's trying to cook more fish than red meat and so on. So you see the impacts. If you aren't getting fish, does that mean you have to import? So you see the impact then on food security. Then you look at the impact on your food import bill. It is all a chain. The dominoes fall as the issue unfolds and the problem unravels and becomes more difficult to manage. So there are connections, and it is very important for us to understand and manage those connections. This is why Roof to Reefs is so important, because it seeks to do exactly that.
The Roof to Reefs program really is Barbados's response to the climate crisis. It presents a model for us to move forward in a holistic and a dynamic way to combat what is an ever-evolving threat that we are faced by with respect to climate change. What it does is that it presents a model for Barbados for the next decade to address our climate resilience. I think what is key for persons to understand is that it is exactly that, a program, and it is dynamic. And so what it seeks to do is to identify key interventions where interventions are already occurring, it seeks to tie those together in that holistic way so that persons can see and understand the importance of those interventions with respect to building climate resilience. At the end of the day, we all have to do our part in this world to mitigate the changes that we're seeing. But for those of us on the front lines of the climate crisis, it is even more important for us to adapt and to become more resilient. And in order for us to become more resilient, we have to take those steps at the social, at the environmental, and at the economic level, addressing all of the key sectors, from housing and shelter, through waste management, through water resources management, energy, our land use practices, as well as ecosystems management and ecosystems-based adaptation. As you imagine yourself from that water droplet that falls from the sky, it first makes contact with the roof. At the individual level, that roof is your dwelling place. At the community or work level, that is your community pavilion, that is your business structure, that is the office where you work. From the national level, that is the topmost ridge or roof of the country. And if you follow that water molecule in its journey from that first contact with the roof all the way to the reef and beyond, you will better understand what it is we're talking about. It is estimated that about 85% of the nutrient loading to the marine environment from on land comes from groundwater, and the other 15% comes from stormwater runoff. And so everything that we do on land, because of the hydrogeology of Barbados, it affects how it gets to the coastline and the fact that it does then have an impact on the reef and beyond. But the reef itself also serves as our front door, or the first structure that seeks to protect us from storm surge and high wave energy that you would associate with an event such as a tropical cyclone.
But what are some of the initiatives that Barbados is pursuing to manage our marine space and further tap into the ocean's potential?
I think the marine managerials, as you said, I think that's a very big project. The marine spatial plan that we are hoping to do, the definition swap, that would finance, because you have to finance all of these things. Those are all important. But we've also started the project. There are 3 current methodologies that we're using, investigating and using to rebuild coral. So we're actively replanting coral in Barbados, using some of the most advanced technologies available to man. And I think that is going to be tremendously important for us in the region. In relation to how we manage our fish stocks, so our regulations currently now have to be amended. And again, I'm hoping to have that before the Parliament very soon. That is going to affect the way that we currently deal with certain fish. There has to be closed seasons. There has to be closed seasons. So that, for example, the parrotfish that produces sand, that keeps our coral reef healthy, that is a big part of maintaining the balance of the ecosystem that is in the ocean. We have to be able to manage that, whether it is through the size of the fish that we allow to be caught, whether it is in certain seasons that we prevent people from being able to catch it. That is going to be of vital importance as well. As part of our commitment with the Commonwealth Clean Ocean Alliance, Barbados had banned the petroleum-based single-use plastics. And there are a few other things in that regard that we have to be able to do to protect the marine life, to protect the turtles, to protect the fish. Because, it's not just on the fish that you see it, but if you eat fish that has eaten plastic, then you're basically consuming plastic as well. So we're doing a number of those things. Any conversation on the blue economy in an era of climate change has also to look at what are you doing for adaptation. So what are you doing to make sure that you educate people, first of all? But what are you doing to protect this space? What beyond the coral reefs? And how do we then put in the revetments that you will see that will prevent the storm surges from coming in? It is going to require that some persons along the coast may have to compromise and allow us to use what they consider to be their space and privacy to be able to build the kind of revetments to protect other Barbadians. But I think generally Barbados is definitely on the right track. When I look at what we're doing to be fossil fuel free, whether it is in the electrical buses, whether it is in the ships that we're trying to decarbonize, or the lease to own arrangement with the fishermen that will be using boats that are hybrids and potentially use renewable energy. I think there are all these things that we're doing, and that if I could say anything going forward, it would be that essentially I think it is coming down to just being able to educate Barbadians about the importance of all of this.
Now, the UNCTAD 15 conference is upon us. Forums are ongoing and the conference is set to take place on October 3rd, 2021. At this stage, you may wonder what role UNCTAD can play in further aiding small island developing states in actioning plans for their blue economies.
With regard to UNCTAD, their focus on the ocean is relatively recent. I mean, they've been dealing with ocean-related matters from the time they were established, but their direct focus on the ocean relates back to the previous UNCTAD conference in Nairobi in 2014, where they were given a mandate to deal with ocean affairs. And to do that, they've been working on that. They set up the 5 pillars that you mentioned. And those pillars, and I'm just looking here, are economic and trade, environmental, social, scientific and technological, and governance. So those are 5 important pillars. And the way that they are formulating it is encouraging, because many people, when they hear about a blue economy, are concerned that what we are looking at is just an extension into the sea of what we've been doing on land for the last however long, and that we're just going to be taking the same kinds of environmental consequences, destruction, overexploitation that has happened on land into the sea. Then on the human side of it, we are concerned, or many are concerned, that blue economy, if approached purely as a development focus with gross domestic product as the outcome or the indicator that is most important, is going to continue to increase the inequitability that we're seeing among countries and among people. So looking at the 5 pillars, it's actually very encouraging to see that they have an environmental pillar and a social pillar. And also the idea of a governance pillar that they have there is very encouraging as well. Because many of the things that are brought under the umbrella of blue economy are things that we have been trying to do for decades, from the beginning of fisheries management, issues relating to land-based pollution, destruction of marine and coastal habitats. These are not new problems that we're going to face in the blue economy. These are problems we've been facing for decades and struggling with. And governance is the underpinning issue there as to whether we can actually do what it takes to reduce fishing pressure, to reduce pollution, and to ensure that as we pursue blue economy, we are doing it in a fair and equitable and transparent and accountable way.
I think UNCTAD will serve to bring tremendous attention to the issues in the Caribbean. I think UNCTAD will serve to bring tremendous attention to the deficits in trade, of course. But I also hope that UNCTAD serves to stimulate the developed countries of the world to play their part in helping us do the things that we have to be able to do. You know, it is not just a conference. It is not just a conference. It is the Caribbean countries, Caribbean economies are on the brink of financial and economic collapse. I mean, make no mistake about it. We already had to deal with sizes that are declining. We already had to deal with burdensome debt, most of us. We already have to deal with limited fiscal space, all of us in the Caribbean. I mean, we've had to deal with, many of us in the region have had to deal with being classified as junk in terms of our credit rating. Many islands in the Caribbean, if not all of us, have to face a very impersonal financial architecture that seeks to blacklist countries in the Caribbean, even when we do the things that they have asked us to do. Even when we do the things that they have asked us to do. If we do not use UNCTAD as a case to make a fight in relation to social justice and equity, then we would be missing the boat. This conference, in my mind, has to be about the Caribbean and the region, saying to the rest of the world, this is the injustice that we are facing, and why. One, this is the potential that we have and that we could maximize with your support. And if we are able to do these two things, then we would reap tremendous benefit from UNCTAD. And I think we will be able to do it. I hope that we are able to do it. And at the end of the day, I hope that we can build the kind of partnerships to allow us to do it going forward, because there really is no other way for Barbados and the Caribbean.
And so the UNCTAD 15 conference holds great significance for small island developing states. If we are to tap into that bounty of potential in our marine space, we must make use of this opportunity to let our voices be heard, share ideas, build solidarity, formulate solutions, and display our potential for the world to see. Well, that brings us to the end of this program. Thank you for watching. I am Miles Eversley. Goodbye.
Out of crisis and catastrophe comes opportunity, yeah, for real change in the world economy, to reduce vulnerability and inequality. So we coming together.